Welcome back to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. Today, we are tackling a silent crisis in the corporate world, leadership burnout. The statistics are kind of scary. Recent data indicate that 56% of leaders reported experiencing burnout. Even more concerning, 70% of C-suite executives have considered quitting to protect their well-being. This isn't just about feeling tired. The neuroscience is clear. Chronic stress and lack of rest significantly impair the prefrontal cortex, the brain control center for decision making, problem solving, and emotional regulation. When leaders are exhausted, their cognitive functions dips, their judgment can become clouded, and their ability to inspire and manage teams effectively diminishes. Research shows that rest isn't a luxury, it's a critical component of peak performance, enhancing cognitive clarity and fostering resilience. But in a culture that often equates busyness with productivity, how can really leaders prioritize rest without sacrificing performance? To answer this, I am delighted to welcome Dr. Erin Wilson, who is the author of Strategic Rest for Leadership, the NAP Framework, a book dedicated to helping leaders boost their performance and prevent burnout through intentional and strategic recovery. Today, we are going to be discussing about the famous NAP framework, navigating your energy, aligning your purpose, and prioritizing your well-being. We are going to explore the science behind this strategic rest, debunk some common misconceptions, and provide actionable steps for integrating these vital practices into the most demanding schedules. Dr. Wilson, I am really, it's so nice to have this discussion because finally the topic itself looks super simple and we understand it because in our day to day, our people, our wives, our friends tell us rest, but it's almost like it doesn't go through our brain and we don't take the right decisions. And so it looks simple in on the intention, but in the action is super difficult. Welcome, Erin, for
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things that I'm constantly talking to clients about, right? Is that they go, "Oh, I don't have time to rest." And so first of all, understanding rest is incredibly important because we always think about it as sleep, but there's so many different ways. So you're absolutely right that we've got to change our relationship and understanding of rest.
And I think that the key word is this understanding because it's almost like a trade-off, as you say. So either am I going to, I don't have the time because I need to make more money. I need to be successful. I need to give what my company is asking for. And we don't put that in a balance. In fact, we have a perception or a reality that might not be true. And that is the most difficult part on humans is that we believe what we perceive as a reality.
Absolutely, right? As we become specific people instead of like doing and having all of these different things, as we start to do, we tend to adopt behaviors that make us who we're trying to be, right? And so, if being a well rested person is something you're trying to be, then that's exactly what the NAP framework is all about to help you start to adopt those behaviors that will get you rested because you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? So my book, of course, written with my co-author, Dr. Kelly Dixon, is all about showing you how to fill your cup without guilt.
That's good. But tell me, is there like a personal story as a reason, as a origin to write this book about the NAP framework? Is there an inspiration from a personal story, or is it an observation that ignited this wish of writing this book?
Absolutely. So it was honestly a little bit of both, right? I was at such a critical part of my career and started to really experience burnout. So much so, I mean, I was the person that would be there burning the midnight oil. Any project I was saying yes to, of course, to try to work my way up this ladder. And ultimately, my body said, No, right? So I experienced my first like stress-induced seizure, and I said there has to be something different. Other people, I started to look around at some of the people that I admired and seeing that they were taking their vacation. They were
Mm,
enjoying PTO. They were not necessarily staying in the office all night. So I started to go, how can this be different, right? So I didn't write this book because I mastered rest. I tell people that all the time, right? I still have to hold myself to the fire to do it. But I wrote it because I almost burnt out chasing leadership titles, right? And I realized through that burnout that rest was not a luxury. It's literally a survival strategy. Okay. So I grew up in a culture of leadership that really praises hustle. Okay. Even the music that I listened to in college was all about hustle and people working all night and doing all of these different things. But I really wanted to disrupt and ask the question that, what if rest is actually a competitive edge? Right? I started to see more people build more. And as they built more, strategic rest started to kind of be into what they did. They could take the more you have, the longer vacations you could take, right? The more you can get people who do some of those smaller things for you. So ultimately, you have more time to do what? To rest and enjoy your space in different pieces. So strategic rest to me is when ambition meets wisdom. Okay. So
mm.
this book is really a love letter to the leaders who are tired, who are suffering burnout, and that they're really tired of being tired.
Hmm. When I was going through your book, one of the things that came to my mind is that, okay, let's make fun a little bit about other cultures. We always have the perception that Japanese that work their ass off and they are super productive. And there has been
Yes.
studies that rank these different cultures, and Japanese are not the most productive people in the world. They stay at work until 11 o'clock in the night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They are not the most productive. And then you see the French. We always have this image of the French people. My neighbors, in fact, I'm 20 kilometers away from the border with France. My neighbors, well, people think that they don't do shit, but in fact, they're one of the most productive people according to that specific research. What the hell?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, because, right, oftentimes we start to think that it started, especially in American culture, for me, even in elementary school, right? Like you would give me the same test as somebody else, and I would finish faster, right? And then, of course, maybe distract other people with my laughing and talking, which is so funny because now it's how I pay, it's how I sustain my lifestyle by laughing and talking with people. But anyway, the teachers sometimes would value the students who would take all of the time needed, but my grades were still fantastic, right? So it doesn't take away just because you do something faster or you optimize something or ultimately you create space for rest. You can still be, to me, even more productive than somebody else. We've got to stop equating movement or looking busy with productivity.
Hmm. I still remember back in the days in corporate, I had a close friend, and we were always make cracking the joke that in order to look busy when we are moving around to chit chat with people, we need to have a piece of paper and going around with that piece of paper so that people think that we are really busy.
Absolutely. I know other people and people even would say this as a strategy to me, especially as I was young in my career, right? They would say you need to be telling people what you're doing. And have you ever shared space with someone who's constantly telling people, "I'm so busy. I don't have time to do anything. I don't whatever." And then I started to see that those people were rewarded, right? For being busy. Whereas I'm getting my work done, I'm doing other people's work, I'm doing all of these different pieces. And so I started to go, man, number one, I need to take care of myself because I have a high ability to be able to do things, but I need to start creating spaces experiences myself where that's not value. Just saying you're busy is not productivity.
Mm.
Pretending to be the victim of your work, to me, is actually showing that you're not good at what you do, right? And so I'm with you. We need to start pushing back. And that's exactly what this book is about, Strategic Rest in Leadership, is pushing back on the narrative about people going, I don't have time, and struggling, and instead looking for leaders who are well rested, because strategic rest, it doesn't require you to stop leading, right? It requires you to start leading yourself. Okay. And so we need to hold, especially as we continue to move forward in workplaces where people are coming back, especially in the American culture, we're starting to see a bunch of folks having to come back from work when they were in spaces where they actually could put micro breaks in. We've got to start having managers who are not just valuing people being busy, but actually, again, being productive, meeting goals, and understanding how it fits into what they're trying to do as a mission for their company, or even their calling, like who they are, you know?
Uh, What you're saying, I like what you're saying, because in a culture, you will always identify these managers who prioritize resting, as well as these managers who have become the role models for these people who complain, the ones who just
Yep,
want to show that they are productive by being just busy and complaining. So you can always
absolutely.
identify these people, and that is a truth that we need to remove this perception that no, everybody is like that. No, there is always the wise person who is prioritizing his well-being because he knows the return on investment is going to be higher if he's well rested.
Absolutely. Because we can't continue to go, I'm going to rest on the weekend, right? Because the weekend hits. If you're anything like me, I'm now on my fourth weekend of having to travel somewhere that I did not plan to be, right? And so if I consistently only said, I'm going to get some rest on the weekend, Monday shows up again and you're exhausted, you're frustrated, and people who are showing up like that don't have clarity. They're not showing up with the same amount of creativity, and they're also not showing up with the same amount of empathy and emotional intelligence that's necessary to be bosses that pull the best out of people, that help them to meet those KPIs, right? That help people want to actually work in the environment that you're leading. And so it's so important for us not to see rest as a reward, as something we can put off, but something that we really add as a part of our strategy, right? Even if it's small chunks during the day. I have an executive coaching client that's one of the big things that we're working on right now. And so even optimizing, putting time on his calendar to actually just look through his calendar has changed his life exponentially. He said, I didn't realize how many people were just throwing things on my calendar. And now that I'm intentional about it, I'm able to have more time to do things. I've connected with people better. And now people are seeing me as a better leader, not just someone who's all over the place. And then I feel better too. So I'm showing up, I'm not snapping at people as much, right? I'm not having to do the whole sit in my garage so I can muster up enough strength to deal with my family, right? He's actually excited to go in at the end of the day to see his family, because now it's rest is throughout the day. Does that make sense?
Indeed. So, but you have highlighted that one of the biggest misconceptions is that we have to wait for either holidays or the weekend in order to rest. And you have also mentioned during this conversation about these micro breaks. Uh, so the misconception is that we need a big amount of time in order to rest. And sometimes this doesn't come because resting is not always being with the family, because you are going to be busy again, taking the children somewhere, discussing with the husband, arguing with the husband, or whatever it is. uh, so
Absolutely.
more about these micro breaks. How does it really work in order that for us to recover?
Absolutely. I feel like first it's incredibly important so people can see how it fits in to really understand the NAP framework, right? So
Mm.
first of all, the NAP framework is, which I just adore, because of course, who doesn't love a good nap, right? So we thought of that when we wrote the book, but NAP, the NAP framework stands for nurture, assess, and prioritize. Okay. So, nurture is all about our energy, what's bringing us energy, how to nurture our mind, our body, and our boundaries in order to sustain our leadership energy. Okay. Oftentimes, and we talked about this at the beginning, people really only see a rest as sleeping. Right. And that is absolutely not the case. There are so many ways in which we can experience rest. If you hit Google, you'll see tons of ways: spiritual, with people, outside, any of these different things. There's a laundry list of ways that we can literally come back from feeling like we have low energy, right? So it's first important to understand what does that for you. I find, and we write in the book, that community, sometimes when you're right with the right people, it can give you that energy, right? Like us, we're smiling and having a good time because we're with good people. I'm going to feel energized after this because literally I'm spending time with someone in a community who understands and gets what I'm talking about, right? So you get energy from that place. You can also actually get energy from learning. A few weekends ago, I saw on Instagram that someone had DJing classes, like actually like playing music. I thought that that was so easy, but I went and found that DJing is actually pretty tough. But even though I was low energy when I started, by the time I finished, because I had learned how to work the turntables and was hyped by the music, I started to feel energy literally from learning something new. So there's so many different ways to do that, okay? So that's nurture. And then after you nurture, it's important for you to assess. Okay. Oftentimes, people just move forward in life without being intentional about what actions they're doing. So, you want to assess what's working for you and what's not working. Self awareness is really one of the largest gateways we have to transformation, right? So, being aware of what's working, what's not working, and then that puts you right down to P, which is prioritize, right? We've got to make sure that we're prioritizing our well being the same way that we prioritize our goals, right? Our rest and strategic rest, specifically as we prioritize it, we need to make sure that it's strategic and it's also consistent. Right? So, as we do that, that makes space for those micro bursts of rest. It could be putting, again, 10 minutes on your calendar before you actually start your day to look at what the day looks like. So you're not just fighting through all day figuring out what that is. It may be getting up from your desk and actually walking around during lunch instead of staying specifically in the place. It could literally be just 90 seconds of stillness between back to back meetings that literally can change your stress response, right? So it's important for you to make sure that you're nurturing yourself in all of those different ways that you can and being strategic about that, assessing what's working, what's not working, and then making sure that you're prioritizing your goals strategically as well as consistently when it comes to rest.
You know what, Erin? I don't know if you are familiar with the concept of design thinking. It's based on iterations, and you have described a little bit this approach that where you create first self awareness. You need data to validate of what you are doing is right, and then
Yep.
you take a decision. You ditch something that is not working. You tweak it, or you continue. You prioritize the.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you find that, you know what, actually stopping to get that coffee and taking a second for my day at the beginning helps me to feel fueled all day, then do it, right? We need to start asking ourselves a simple question, right? At the end of the day, we need to start asking ourselves not just one simple question, but a few things, right? What fueled me today? What drained me today? Okay, those are the two things to be asking yourself. And then that one habit of asking yourself those two questions, what fueled me, what drained me, will really start to transform how you lead and how you show up for the people that you're leading. Even if you're not a leader in the managerial sense, even for the way that you show up for the people that you love in your life.
Mm. So what I need to recap a little bit because there is a wealth of information here. So rest is not napping, it's not like sleeping. That is super correct. There is
Abs-
100 or
Absolutely, right?
1,000 activities that you can do, sense of belonging, exchanging with people. Sometimes even I was mentioning to you that I live in a small town, that just looking at the nature, this feeling of, oh, belonging to something big. I mean, people has that with religion. I don't have it with religion. I have it with the nature. But for instance,
Yes.
doing activities that are entertaining, that where your mind is a little bit outside of the task itself, like it's discussing with your teen daughter, like me, this is what I do. That's something that relaxes me. And then there is the principle that is in your book. The NAP framework is not a linear. It's not a, this is what you have to do. It is an iteration. And then it becomes your thing. It's not somebody else told
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. So it doesn't stop, right? Every day I take the opportunity to ask myself those questions. Number one, because it's a cycle. You're constantly, even multiple times throughout the day, am I nurturing myself? Have I? Where's my energy, right? Did I set boundaries that allow me to still have that kind of energy, right? Assessing what's happening, what's working, what's not working. These, you could do this every 5 minutes sometimes, right? Or it could be something that you're doing at night. But the nap framework is that piece, that little bite-sized chunk that helps you really be intentional about looking at where that energy is moving and how to use that again to really make sure that you're leading from the best place, that you're showing up as the best version of yourself. A lot of people that I've worked with, when I've done sessions about this for corporations and for teams and for different folks, because that's what, of course, what I do. I'm a consultant, and own a learning and development consulting firm. So now you can probably imagine, because you're listening, that of course I do engaging trainings, but one of them that I talk about, of course, is how to rest and how that connects with using not just your strengths, but also like reviving yourself through rest, right? And so as I do that, it becomes incredibly important for people to really understand that there's a science kind of behind it, right? That sleep again is just that brain maintenance, but we've got to have rest in order to optimize what's happening in our brain. So when people start to go, I don't have time, I feel guilty if I'm resting, I tell them you need to displace that guilt and put it instead that you're not showing up as the best version of yourself for the people around you, right? Because sometimes, especially some of the things that we deal with as managers, we're not just managing process and procedure. We're managing humans. And sometimes that requires us to take on a little bit of the stuff that they have that goes on outside. So if we're not rested, if we're not showing up as the best version of ourselves, then how can we ever expect other people to be able to do that? Number one, if we're not modeling the way. But if you have nothing to give, no foundation to support with, then everything will come toppling down.
Hmm. I, I guess that despite the fact that you have a model that is in iterations, there are still a couple of things that we tell ourselves that this is resting and it's not resting. Certain things that we know either by science that it wouldn't work. Like, I don't know what you think about watching Netflix. Is it resting or not? Looking at social media, is it resting or not? What is your
That
take on that?
That's a really great question. I get people who ask me that all the time. I think it depends on the intentionality because oftentimes I can be inspired by something that I watch, right? Because sometimes people will say, no, if you're just sitting there vegging out on the couch or just there being a couch potato, then you're not really resting. But I think rest looks different for everybody. Sometimes, literally, to show up as my best self, it does require me to have maybe a time on the weekend to watch something that I really have loved, right? I know for me, or at the beginning of my career, watching reality TV was something that would just give me so much energy. So I think we have to stop doing a one size all approach to rest because there's just so many different ways that people experience it. So I will tell people if sitting on the couch, watching something that makes you laugh, that makes you cry, is a part of how you rest and recover and gain energy, then do it. Don't let someone tell you what rest should look like because that's how we got into this. This is how we got into this hustle culture, especially for us to begin with, right? So,
Mm.
yeah, go for it.
Is there, have you heard about or have you seen some other things that we believe that is resting, but it's not, that it is in the
Mhm.
popular culture? Yeah, let's do this.
Absolutely. I think one of the, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but I think sometimes vacation, like away, can sometimes be one of those tricky pieces for some people that's not actually rest, right? Now, there are some of us that are able to go on vacation with maybe another person who did all the work and it feels like vacation for them, right? But for some of us who are the friend or the wife or the spouse that creates all the plans, that makes sure that people go where to eat, that knows where we're supposed to fly out, that's watching the gate when all of these different things, you may come back even more tired than you were, right? So we need to ultimately not think about what is like what are ways that people can rest, but ultimately how you're being intentional about finding the things that work for you and also finding the things that don't work for you. I
Mm.
just came back from vacation with my family, who I love. I love, love, love. And so by family, I mean my husband and I always call her my little sister, even though she's a grown doctor, but I say little sister, and then my mother and father, right? But for me, I planned all of the vacation from the place that we stayed, from the travel, even in the airport, I made sure that people had rides. So I knew when I got back from that vacation that even though all of them would feel rested and had the best time ever, I would not. So I created space all through this week, right, for me to feel like I could gather energy from quiet, from all of those different things. So that's to me why it's important. Those tricky things can easily turn into things that don't feel rested, and you come back and you're frustrated. So even asking yourself in the things that could kind of look like vacation, again, those questions: what fuels me? And then also what drains me?
Mm. I I guess that for writing your book, you have used, and I saw it. In fact, there is a couple of reference to scientific research that that has been mentioned in the book. What are the two or three research that you said, what the hell, this is crazy, and we don't know that, or people do not know that?
Right. I think one of the biggest pieces is really that sometimes people don't understand like the deepness of neuroscience, right? And how that's important to understand as we rest, right? So neuroscience really tells us that that downtime is when our brain integrates that learning and starts to unlock creativity. And so it's important for us to be able to do that. If we're never leaving space for us to be able to be creative, for us to be able to be innovative, for us to gain clarity, sometimes that stepping away literally does that. So we've been ignoring what people have told us in science is necessary in order for us to be our best, right? And so that's not laziness to rest, it's actually leadership intelligence, in my opinion, for you to be able to do that. Also, what we find too, when you think about the science of rest, is that emotional regulation decision making, even empathy are really linked to how well rested you are. For your prefrontal cortex, like how well rested that is so important. So in other words, it's really simple. Tired leaders make tired decisions.
Mm.
Right? Like, period. That's just kind of how it is. And then also, strategic rest really helps us as humans to get out of that survival mode piece. So many leaders that I work with through coaching and different people when I go to do facilitations and talk to them specifically about relationship intelligence and strength-based leadership, all are kind of in this survival mode thing. And the big piece, especially when it comes to rest, is that it starts to, especially strategic rest, being intentional about it, helps you make that shift from survival mode into visionary thinking, right? And that's so necessary. So the science really backs it, and so does the result of people who are not just being zombies moving through the space, just trying to, again, be reactive to everything, but it also provides those results because you're able to think about the next thing, to be innovative, to see things coming instead of constantly trying to block what now is coming straight towards you, right? So yeah, I mean, science tells us that rest is incredibly important. I don't know why that wasn't in our fifth grade textbook, or
I
at
know
least that the
why,
teacher didn't hit
Erin.
it that.
I was thinking about it just now that the fact is that maybe 15 years ago or so, when you were taking a book of neuroscience, it was like reading organic chemistry. It was like ununderstandable, so boring and dull. And finally, I have the
Absolutely.
impression that now the books that are based on neuroscience are a little bit more accessible because you see the connection
Yes.
between behaviors and these MRIs that they are taking in the brain. They don't talk anymore about which molecule. They talk about this is what is happening in your brain. Like you mentioned creativity. There is less connections between different parts of your brain. Oh, simple to understand. They don't mention the whatever chemical was responsible. We don't care about that.
Absolutely. We just want to know what's happening. And that is what we see, right? When I step away, even again, I made sure, even though I said I did all of the things for the vacation and came back, not necessarily completely rested, I still made sure to spend time, like you talked about, looking in nature, just being in the pool, right? And during that, I thought of so many different things that I wanted to do for my business, for clients. I was able to check in with people and to continue to be able to pitch clients on important pieces. But all of this was thought of when I was taking breaks, when I was looking for ways to intentionally regenerate energy that's necessary and for me to be at the top of my game.
Mm. And it's not like working. These ideas come to you because they are in the back of your mind. So they come naturally because the accessibility of different areas of your brain. When you are relaxed, it's easy. But when you are tense, stress is like it is impossible.
Absolutely. Again, it really is switching from that survival mode, which so many folks who are in that hustle culture are living. They're just surviving. And instead, rest allows for you to move to that visionary piece, right? To really be thriving in the space that you're in, to be supporting the people who help you reach the goals that you're looking for. So it's incredibly important for us to do that. So we understand the energy that's necessary. So we're moving with purpose, and that we're really prioritizing not just our well being, but modeling that for the people who we support and the people we care about.
Hmm. I notice that very often when you are talking about about your model, you it's almost like intertwine this concept of being strategic and intentional. It's almost like we could replace it. Eh, and for this part about being intentional, I mean, people don't even have the time to take the break just to be intentional. They are in the flow of work and not the
Yep.
good flow, the good psychological flow where they're enjoying. No, they're hating their lives. And it can produce, like, when you feel like your life is out of control, it can be one of the sources for burnout, because your life is somebody else dealing with your family, your boss, your company, whatsoever. And that this is where we break. Erin, let's talk cash here. Good actions. So, what actions this leader who feels that his life is not belonging to him, uh, how should he start and implement those clear actions based on the NAP framework in order to start now? Small little actions like tomorrow.
Absolutely. So the first one to me would be checking in with yourself. And I know that can feel tough, right? But oftentimes when we say we can't do something, that's not the truth. Can't is literally means that you absolutely cannot, that we're choosing not to, right? There's so many different spaces that we need to be able to. And one of the things that I want to do more work on is to help people understand some of those ways to hack their time, right? Lean and all of these different things allows for you to get time back. So I want to make sure that people are able to do that, right? But so some real ways to make sure that you're applying this. If it's not on your calendar, it's not going to happen. So I really challenge leaders to schedule their energy the same way that they schedule meetings, right? Again, like I talked about, even if it's 10 minutes at the beginning, where it's the beginning of your day, whether it's the middle of your day, really looking to protect your lunch and time afterwards is something that you need to make sure that you're doing, right? I know that can feel tough when everything around you, don't get me wrong, I have worked in some high energy spaces, and I literally tell people now that even though I own my own consulting firm, at this point, I work harder for me than I ever worked for anybody else. But I still know that I show up at my best when I'm scheduling time in order for me to do that. Okay. So if you're looking to jump in right now with strategic rest and to use the NAP framework, we talked about those micro breaks, right? Again, maybe it's only 90 seconds of stillness in between those back to back meetings, but that can literally change your response to the stress that you're experiencing at work, at home, or sometimes even at play, right? And again, I talked about those questions that become incredibly important. What fueled me today? Ask yourself that. Whether you're if you're someone who journals, write it down, right? But also what drained me, because if you can start that tiny habit, you can start to assess what are the things that are making this tough. Is it that I don't have boundaries, so every time someone comes to my office I let them in even though I have a bunch of stuff going on, instead of going, hey, can you schedule that with me and I'm happy to help you, instead of immediately saying yes to something that someone asks you. One of the things that I do all the time, and this saves me so much time and energy. I, of course, because of the nature of my job, run into people all the time outside at different things. It could be dinners, it could be meetings, it could be all of these things. People go, oh, I need to talk to you about this. I want to do this and this and this with you. So I go, oh, that sounds fantastic. Send me an email, right? Now, I never said no. I said, send me an email, and I'm happy to figure that out. But the email literally starts to filter out people who are incredibly serious and people who are not serious at all. So start setting those small boundaries for yourself. If there's nothing else, boundaries are kindness. And I could talk all day about that. Showing people and modeling how to treat you, how to engage with you is also one of the things that allows for you to have the energy that you want and also show up as your best space. Okay. Remember, strategic rest doesn't require you to stop leading. That's what people feel. It's pause with purpose so that you're leading yourself to be able to show up as your best self. Yeah.
You use the word protect, and I love that, because it's almost like energy is like one asset, one resource that we have. As we have the resource that is time, that we have the resource that is money, and then we have our own energy. And I
Absolutely.
mean, what type of a leader are we if we are not capable of managing these three areas so that we can have a fulfilling
Absolutely.
life?
Yes, and people protect their money, right? You don't just walk around and give people your debit card or give people how to get into your bank to steal your money, not on purpose. Most people don't, right? So why would you not protect your energy with that same zeal? Because it's so important. Our time is important. We only get a limited amount of it. So even if you're protecting maybe your time, but you don't feel good when things are happening, then are you really, again, showing up as the best version of yourself? I ask myself constantly, what would the most successful version of Erin be doing right now? Right? Or how would the most successful version of Erin show up? How would the most successful version of Erin answer this question? And when I do that, it allows for me to be able to really think not just of who I am now, but the future Erin. Okay. And so to me, protecting not just your money, but also protecting your energy, exactly like you said, is so important to who we are as leaders and who we are as humans, to me, that hopefully want to use our time and talents to make the world a better place.
Hmm. I I sometimes have read about certain of the leaders, like I don't know, the CEO of Google, type of things that he takes care of, and it looks like to me that this guy he will take care of his mental health, his body. He will go running. He will take some certain breaks or where he's not available. And then I go into, I don't know if you're familiar with Richard Branson, this Brit who founded Virgin. The guy doesn't look like
Yeah,
he's working. He looks like he's enjoying everything. But this guy is one of the
exactly.
most productive in the world.
Exactly, right? That's what I started to look at. I started to see that people who, and it's not just about wealth, right? Like a lot of us think about, oh, if we get more money, then we'll have time to do all of these different things. But honestly, we could start to really think backwards that a lot of the creative ideas that people have had has come out of them taking time to be able to be creative and taking care of themselves. So we've got to work backwards from that. But you're absolutely right. Some of the most prolific and productive people that we consider around the globe are people who respect and really look for ways in order to protect their time, their energy, and ultimately they are practitioners of strategic rest, right? It
Mm.
doesn't mean that some days won't be busy. Matter of fact, lots of days can be busy. I often tell people I'm not busy, but I'm booked, right? And so, because people will go, oh, you're always flying out to go all and do all of these different things. I choose to not be busy because I don't want that to be the thing to describe me, because I am intentional about the way that I use my time. So, yes, do I have a lot of things on my plate? Absolutely. And I hope that there are always a lot of things on my plate. That's a blessing to me, right? But the thing that I can control is looking and feeling busy, right? So I do that by really creating space for intentional rest, even again, if it's a small, before I do the next task, I do it. Even if it's standing up and walking away from my computer to go pet my little pit bull and say hi to Harley Quinn is her name, then those are things that you can do in order to come back so that you are really being your best self when you're showing up for people that you lead.
Mm. Came to my mind that this American, Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, this guy, if I remember correctly, he needs to have his 8 hours of sleep every day. He takes breaks and he naps. The guy, despite
Absolutely.
the fact he's one of the wealthiest person in the world and he has been working, he's almost close to 90 now, 89 at least.
So why would we not take that model, right? Why it's so wild to me how people believe that just the move, 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 move is how this is happening, but it's not. People collect wealth, people collect all of these different things in order to have time to be able to rest. So we need to make sure that we're watching what's happening in that space, but using that as well so that, again, we have all of the energy, all of the things that we need in order to really be the best versions of ourselves. And again, like I said, everything is not about or creating money. Some of us are, will never be billionaires, right? But we can have wealth in the way of that we have energy, that people actually want to be in the room with us, that our children remember us as people who actually spent time with them and valued rest. So we're regulated and folks that are the best versions of ourselves. We owe it to the people around us, to the people that we lead, to the people that we love, to be our best selves. So, yes, if what you need to hear is that billionaires rest in order for you to do it, then do it, right? But we should all collectively be really checking in with ourselves to understand, because again, self awareness and being intentional is really a superpower, right?
Indeed, indeed. So just to recap, so we have mentioned that there is three things that are important for most of us to have: financial stability, that we are healthy, that we have enough time for things that we care. So we need to be able to manage it a little bit like we will manage a portfolio. Certain moments we will do more of something, certain, but as long as there is equilibrium, we can maintain the overall wealth that is us staying alive, enjoying life, not just staying alive and bitching about life.
Absolutely. Listen, track your energy like you're tracking those KPIs. And a lot of my folks at corporations know what that is, because you can't fix what you don't measure, right? So, again, asking yourself those important questions: what fueled me today? What drained me? Is so important, because you need to be asking yourself, am I leading from a place of overflow? Am I leading from a place of depletion today? And then take actionable steps in order to do whatever is necessary for you. Remember, I talked about there's so many different ways for people to feel rested. If it's listening, taking time to actually listen to this whole podcast, right, could be where you get your energy, and setting up a time in your schedule every week to make sure that you're listening to whatever it is that gives you energy is just so important, right? Am I coming from a place of overflow, or am I leading from a place of depletion? And if more leaders ask themselves that, oh, can you imagine what our workforce could look like?
Indeed. Tell me, so how can people reach you out if they have questions, if they want to transform their lives? In fact, we're not talking about work anymore. If they want to transform their lives, how can they reach you out?
Absolutely, because me on my website. So is designed, and you can, if you are looking for a fun way to get energy every week, that's the perfect place to do it. So on YouTube, it's the Power Nap Live. Look me up. I've got a 30-minute show that I do each week, and that may be your time for yourself, where I talk through, again, the nap framework.
Thank you very much, Erin, for your time. So I'm going to be putting a couple of links below this episode. I'm going to be putting the link to your book, because I think that this is a good way to start if we are still procrastinating about it. I'm going to be putting the link to your YouTube channel and to your website. Erin, it was lovely to meet you. And really, the conversation that we had before about the cities around where you have been living is like wonderful. You made me dream for a moment. I was with all this music, beautiful music around.
Well, I tell you what, you give me a call whenever you're in the area, and we'll have to make sure that we get some good brisket together,
Oh,
okay?
nice. Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Erin.
having me, and thank you for listening.